Hi, my name is Darren McHugh, and I'm going to give a presentation today on Pharma 4.0 and smart manufacturing. We're going to cover some ground about the origins of Pharma 4.0 and Industry 4.0 and what preceded it, as well as we'll get in a little bit about smart manufacturing and smart factories with an angle on pharmaceuticals and that regulatory environment. So let's jump right in. Here's some of the topics we'll cover today. We'll go about the background, the Viva la Revolution of the industrial revolutions that went before us and up to present day and maybe the future as well. We'll talk a little bit about the regulatory landscape, and that's really bringing in the regulatory landscape around pharmaceuticals and selling drug products into the market. And then we'll cover some background around Pharma 4.0, what it is, why it's important, smart manufacturing using advanced technology. We'll discuss that as well. And then we'll finish off with an actual case study talking about using our product SmartX, which is a digitization and automation platform being used in this environment. So a little bit of background about us. Inno Pharma was started back in 2009 by Dr. Ian Jones. And since then, we've grown into different divisions. We are now Inno Pharma Education, Technology, and Technical Services, all complementary divisions to each other for this new Industry 4.0, Pharma 4.0 world that we live in. We're based out of Sandyford, Dublin, Ireland, and our headcount now is up to 120 employees, and we're still growing, which is great. A little bit about our journey as Inno Pharma Technology. We started off in the realm of sensors and process analytical technology, so working with advanced tech, smart technology, trying to get the data analytics for inline and making real-time decisions about your processes, so really adding value to that process development environment, predominantly in pharmaceuticals, but not exclusively. More recently, we moved into the Pharma 4.0 industry, or Industry 4.0 as well, for smart manufacturing. And that's with our product SmartX, which is a platform that can sit on top of this PAT sensors, as well as your process equipment, to amalgamate the data into one location so you can control your processes, automate them, digitize them, and really gain insights about how to get to market quicker, how to get bigger yields, etc. But more on that later. So let's go back a little bit and talk about the industrial revolutions, the Viva la Revolution. So we've lived through 4 industrial revolutions. We're currently living in the 4th. The 5th is on the precipice. It's happening. It's pretty much happening right now. The first industrial revolution can be attributed to things like using steam power. So having power to move objects or manufacturing lines or create goods with steam. So it was revolutionary for its time. Everything was created by hand and manual before then. And then the second industrial revolution is attributed with things like the electric assembly line. Henry Ford has a claim to that. And also Henry Ford has a claim to bringing in the 5-day work week. So thank you for that, Henry Ford. And then the third industrial revolution, which we've lived through, is the computer era, automation with computers, etc., and bringing in that digital technology. The 4th industrial revolution is what we're living in now. We're all familiar with a lot of pillars around Industry 4.0, such as cyber-physical systems, IIoT, interconnectivity of things really is what Industry 4.0 is all about. We're now at the precipice of Industry 5.0, which is all about sustainability and a human-centric approach to us and technology. And it's probably going to be because of Industry 5.0 that will live long enough to see its fruition. And what's interesting as well is about these timelines about the industrial revolutions is you'll notice here at the bottom that pretty much a Moore's law is being applied every time we have a revolution, meaning the time is getting cut in half. And that's why it's been about 50 years since the 3rd to the 4th industrial revolution, and it's only going to be about 25 years between the 4th and the 5th industrial revolution. So that's why we have the privilege of living through 3 industrial revolutions. Okay, so that's a little bit of background and color about industrial revolutions. If we stick with Industry 4.0, which we're very heavily embedded in now, these are all pillars around what Industry 4.0 is, and I'm sure we're all familiar with what these are. Cybersecurity is in our everyday lives, automation, cloud computing is something we even take for granted now. All our devices are connected to the cloud. Artificial intelligence, we're seeing more and more every day with things like image analysis and using machine learning, which is an umbrella under artificial intelligence. And it's all about real-time monitoring of this data and machine-to-machine communication more and more. Smart machines talking to smart machines is the ideas around Industry 4.0. So if we jump then into a bit of like regulatory perspective around what it means for pharmaceutical industry. So pharmaceutical companies cannot sell their end products if they've not been proven to be produced correctly and conform to the standards that have been set out in their submissions. So that's fair to say that they have to reach a certain level of compliance in order to sell these products into the drug market or into the market. And that's obvious for reasons of the end users being vulnerable and looking for the best products that they can get out there, and just things like to deliver on efficacy, etc. So what that kind of means traditionally is that, I reach an X standard, I comply, brilliant, I can sell my products. But there's a lot of things pharmaceutical companies have not been taking into account along that journey, such as things as efficiency in their process, or making their processes smarter to learn about them. It's more like recipe driven, put X in, get Y out, for example. While the regulators around the world, the FDA and the ICHs, have been trying to change this over time and bring in more standards that would give the companies the benefit of trying to use advanced technology to learn more about their processes so they can improve on sustainability, yields, get the product to market quicker, more digitization, less paper for filing, etc. All these things have been happening for years now. So companies have kicked off pretty much all their own COEs, centers of excellence, to research different areas that they can use advanced tech and bring that into their plants or into their manufacturing lines to try and deliver on these things of producing products quicker, cheaper, higher yield, etc. And a few of those examples are shown in this slide. So if we look at a parallel industry to pharmaceuticals, the semiconductor industry, and just to see basically where the improvements, I guess, could be made in the pharma industry. Semiconductor industry has an overall equipment effectiveness rating of about 80 to 90%. And pharma has a lot of ground to make up, as you can see here. So it really does go to show that advanced tech needs to be used more in the pharmaceutical environment to kind of gain this ground of, let's say, either competitiveness or delivering on efficacy, for example. There's plenty of room here for growth for pharma companies to bring in more advanced technology, to digitize their processes, to automate them, etc. So if we step back then into, let's say, the automation side of things for factories, this is the ISA 95 hierarchical chart. It's been developed by the International Society of Automation back in 1995, and this has been classically the reference point for anyone who would want to bring in smart technology, automation, digitization into their plant. They would start with this. They would look at what field level their devices are at, and it's always been a really good tool for communication with stakeholders, to lower the total cost of ownership, to make it more error-free for integration of all these different level devices into your factory. Now, some would argue that this is actually a little bit outdated and things have evolved since the creation of ISA 95, and that's fair enough with Industry 4.0, Pharma 4.0, but ISA 95 is still a great reference point for working toward automation and digitalization. So that's why we show it here. So there's ISA 95. Pharma 4.0, what we see here is ISPE's operating model. So the International Society for Pharma Engineering and its members around the world have come up with this operating model for digital maturity, data integration by design of into a pharmaceutical industry. So, and I quote, the objective is to leverage the potential of digitization to provide faster innovations for the benefits of patients. And that's the goal of ISPE and its members. So since the operating model, ISPE has broken it out into working groups. And so around the world, we do have different working groups working on these different areas to bring in Pharma 4.0 into the industry. So there's really good work being done by ISPE and its members. If we look at SmartX, a technology which has been designed and built for Pharma 4.0 or Industry 4.0, it's actually, you can see it here where it sits into the level of the ISA 95 hierarchy. So essentially you have your process equipment. It's been designed for process environments, manufacturing as well as R&D, formulation development, etc. You can see here the level 1 and the level 2 of your different devices, and then the different components that make up SmartX and how it takes that data, manages it, brings it up to the cloud, for example, for visualization. We have a data integration hub, meaning you can bring in any sensor you want into it. We also have a advanced dynamic process controller, which is really what's allowing you to do the automation of communicating between devices and making decisions and getting feedback and tweaking your machines to get the end product that you want. So that's a breakdown really of what SmartX is and how it sits into this hierarchical needs of automation and digitization. But then if we look at SmartX again, overall, this product that we offer, how it sits into all these different areas of the ISA 95 automation, Industry 4.0 framework and all its pillars that it touches, as well as the ISP's Pharma 4.0 working group framework and how it encompasses that as well. So basically we're saying here, it's a suitable technology that has evolved with these types of interpretations of Industry 4.0, Pharma 4.0. So we get a little bit more granular and look into what actually SmartX is. It's basically a real-time digitization and automation platform that can be installed horizontally into your factory. And what that means really is we'll install basically servers either locally or remotely, so you can then communicate with your process equipment, with your PAT devices, with your sensors, and amalgamate and unify all that data. It's vendor agnostic, meaning you can bring in any sensor or data that you want. What we see here on the screen is the HMI, the human machine interface that's been installed on the factory floor for the operators to see and control their processes. So you can bring in and build your own dashboards here for whatever data is relevant to your process, giving you unique insight to what's happening there and then, potentially giving you the option to save a multi-million-dollar batch of API, for example. But beyond that, SmartX offers things like with the cloud, you can do dashboards, and that allows you to really work as teams and make better decisions about your processes. So you can share the data with your team basically around the world. You could dial into SmartX, look at all this time-aligned data in one location, work with subject matter experts that might be at a different site or consultant, for example, and work in a Teams or Zoom fashion that we're all familiar with today to advance your process development and again get to market quicker. And that's what we're seeing here. Another unique aspect of SmartX is its low-code, no-code capability that's been built in. So it's been designed for the process development environment, working with process scientists who need to know how to actually control their processes, and you necessarily not be a programmer to do that, to interact with a program like SmartX. So what we have here is a type of drag and drop bars and different process steps that can be built in so you can decide what you need to do next with your process. A type of if this then that approach to building out your automation strategy within SmartX for your piece of process equipment with all that extra data from your sensors, for example. So essentially Pharma 4.0, it's fair to say, it's not just about running the machines and processes and monitoring it or even setting a recipe and walking away. SmartX offers you to basically monitor it as it's running, but tune it as you go as well. So it's a smart process. It's not purely just automation, set it, lights out, walk away. It's using its feedback, it's using controls, giving you more data to make better decisions, and you're tuning your process over time. Okay, so let's get into the case study that's been done with the technology SmartX. Here we're talking about a self-guided fluid bed granulation process, and this is a paper we have out in conjunction with TUD Dublin as well as University of Limerick and ourselves. Here we can see a fluid bed granulator. This is down in basically the Centre of Excellence down in the Burnell Institute with the University of Limerick. And this is in conjunction with the PMTC, the Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Technology Centre that they have down there. And we're looking at a fluid bed process. You can see obviously the fluid bed on the left. This is a glass multi-lab machine, but what's been installed horizontally on top of it really is the SmartX, that screen you see in the middle. And it's basically allowing you to control this piece of process equipment, develop your own process steps to automate it, and using all that extra data from some of the sensors we have on this equipment is a particle size analyzer, or Icon 2, a multi-I2 for moisture content, but not just that, we also have a loss and weight balance that we installed, room temperature sensors, humidity sensors, any really third-party sensor that you want can be brought into this, as well as the process equipment's sensors and technology as well. So this case study, we looked at fluid bed granulation, the traditional approach. I could talk about fluid bed granulation for an hour, or there's plenty of good talks out there already about it. But I think it's fair to say that the traditional approach to fluid bed in industry is it's a batch process typically. It's recipe driven typically, especially in manufacturing environments where it's basically set it, put X in, set the dials, hopefully Y comes out, test it at end. If you conform, happy days, move on to your next process. There's little to no real-time inline measuring of any of the CQAs, critical quality attributes, and seeing what effect changing your CPPs, your critical process parameters, have on those CQAs, such as particle size, moisture, whatever your interest is in to get this product to conform. So what we did then, we installed an instance of SmartX onto a fluid bed and did a study. This is just some of the background around the materials and equipment that were done for it. There's more information in the longer study about it itself, but these are all very typical materials and processes and parameters that would have been used for any fluid bed granulation process. So what we did, we used the Advanced Dynamic Process Control, the ADPC aspect of SmartX. That's one of the modules that are within it, to set all these different process phases. And these are smart process phases, as what I mean is there's a type of if this then that approach to their design. So they can't move on to the next stage unless certain criteria are met, and there's a feedback control within these as well. For example, for the very first phase, we have to preheat a bowl. You continue until your exhaust temperature reaches a certain temperature. Not the product bowl temperature itself, but the exhaust, because then you know the air coming out of it is hot and has unified the heat of all the metal that's been passed through. That's one small example. All this was done with the low-code, no-code environment. We also have a scripting engine in there as well. If you want to get more, let's say, granular or dynamic, you can actually use a type of Python code even to develop this out as well. But there is these aspects of low-code, no-code. So it's flexible for people's needs. If we look at the data, which is actually quite interesting, what came back, this is all the time-aligned amalgamated data in one location on the dashboards that came back from SmartX. If we just look at a certain parts of the data here, we can see actually the airflow control was dynamic. So we didn't just set the airflow and walk away to one setting. We didn't just set it to a time phase where it would constantly step up over time. It was actually based on the amount of moisture content within the fluid bed. And what that actually means is if the material's getting wetter inside, it's getting heavier, thus meaning it's going to need more air to fluidize it, to keep it aerated so it doesn't stick to the bottom of the bed, it doesn't cake is a term that's used, and you lose your batch. And that's something that was not possible with the traditional equipment or methods of controlling the process. So with SmartX, we're able to build this in, measure the moisture content, it gets heavier, sure, up the airflow. So you can see that this orange line is jumping up and down, really adjusting the airflow as the material gets heavier. So that's one aspect that was pretty interesting about using SmartX for this type of process. The other was that during the spraying phase 2, we were able to use the less stable development batch to demonstrate that the active control for the spray rate during phase 2 was able to control the moisture reduction profile. And what that really means is it toughened and hardened the particles without further growth, meaning we didn't grow the particles larger than we needed to, but we didn't suffer any attrition during that phase either, and made harder particles, making them more conform to the standards that are required. So if we look at that data side by side, so ADPC versus non-ADPC, basically traditional granulation, fluid bed granulation versus SmartX granulation, we can see that the particle size was much tighter controlled, and we can also see the moisture content was much tighter controlled by using this advanced dynamic technology. And that's just one of our case studies we've done with using this new type of digitalization automation platform, SmartX. So we covered a lot of ground today. I really went through a lot of it quickly, but basically I wanted to conclude here by just saying we did cover what Industry 4.0 is and its background, Pharma 4.0, its background and what it means for going forward in the future for pharmaceuticals, as well as SmartX and how it sits into those environments, and the value add that it brings into process development in pharmaceuticals and Industry 4.0 in general, being a smart, connected, digital automation platform. We did go through our case study around fluid bed granulation, and there's more about that online. And also what we didn't touch today on really is Pharma 5.0, which is a whole presentation in itself, which we hope to do soon. Look, thank you for your time. My name's been Darren McHugh. If you have any more questions or anything you'd like to find out more about us and SmartX and Industry 4.0, please feel free to reach out to find more. Thank you.